What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, it is time for the 2022 season preview. So this will be in a playlist on YouTube and then, of course, in your feed on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we're going to break down every Power 5 conference. But this week, we're going to start with our independents and group of 5. We have picked the 8 teams that are ranked the highest 8 teams by win total and by Bill Connolly's FC Plus. That's a great just power rank metric to kind of, even it all out as far as like what the top 8 teams should be, by a Vegas style power rating. So Daniel, I'm excited to dive into these teams and start to make some season previews and predictions, man.
Yeah, this is an exciting time. This is something that we look forward to. And, it's like this moment for us is like the marker of the preseason. We're beginning the build up to the season. So, we're less than 100 days. And, it's going to seem a lot more organized in the following weeks because this one, obviously, we're having to kind of piece some things together. But on a major scale, this is like the misfit toys. You've got the independents, you've got the group of 5, but just like the highlights. We're hitting the highlights here. This is a best of for this episode. But then going from here, we're going to be hitting individual conferences. And so people will know where to find their team when they see, whether it's the ACC or the SEC or the Pac-12, or if you're a Big Ten guy, they'll be able to know, hey, they're talking about my team today. So, guys, get involved and, give us a question, give us something that you want. If you're a Michigan fan, if you're a fan of a team we're about to break down, we definitely want to mention something. If you have a little tidbit, Cartwright, about South Carolina, who undoubtedly will let us know his breakdown, but this is the time to do it. So definitely reach out to us.
Hey, and if you're a fan of a group of 5 team and we're not doing it today, hey, leave us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts. We'll put it in the review. Or, hey, even just comment on this video what the team wants us to do, and we'll just drop a little 5-minute video for you and your team. So happy to do that. If we're, if you feel like we're not hitting your team, let us know, and we're happy to do it. So we, it's hard to do 130 teams in college football. So trying to do the ones that will get listened to the most. But hey, if we're not doing your team, you let us know. We're happy to do it. But Daniel, we've picked our 8. I'm going to run through them real quick, and we're going to go in order of win total. And previous seasons, Daniel and I have put our heads together beforehand and kind of come to a compromising or collaborative. Hey, here's the record. Here's order of finish. But this year, we already knew it on the front end. We had some pretty big disagreements about some big name teams. And I was like, you know what? This might be fun to just debate this on air. Let's just have different predictions while we talk about them. Because, hey, none of us, all think the same anyway. So This will be a lot more fun. So we're going to go through win totals. We'll go over, under the win total, kind of give our take on each team and how the season plays out, hit some highlights. But, starting this week, we've got Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, BYU, Boise State, Fresno State, and SMU. So, hey, a couple Mountain West teams, few American teams, couple independents. Nobody from the MAC, nobody from the Sun Belt. So, hey, a lot of movement with those teams. So, hey, you're a Georgia Southern, you're an App State fan, Louisiana. Hey, just let us know. We're happy to come back and hit those teams. But, Daniel, let's start with a team that is – hey, coming off another double-digit win season, but for the first time in, 9 seasons, Notre Dame is without Brian Kelly. So Brian Kelly leaves for LSU. Notre Dame promotes Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator, for 1 season. 2 head coach, and Notre Dame's win total is set at 9.5 for the 2022 season. So, Daniel, you going over, under, and kind of giving your take on the Fighting Irish?
First of all, I think that's a phenomenal number. 9.5, I think, is sitting right in the sweet spot because they have Ohio State on the schedule and they have Clemson on the schedule. And so, traditional, values, whatever, you'd expect those 2 to probably be losses. I don't know. And then you can you find another loss? They have been a model of consistency under Brian Kelly these last several years. We're not sure what Marcus Freeman's going to be since he's only had one season of even being a coordinator at the level of, I guess you want to call it Power Five, with Notre Dame being independent. That being said, of major college football, I would say, even though he was at Cincinnati when they had some good teams, he's a fast riser. I think he's going to break that ceiling as far as recruiting goes. We're going to still have to see how this shakes out. I like this team. I think Tyler Buchner being at quarterback is going to kind of unlock a few things for them. They still have Tommy Rees as the offensive coordinator, so I think that continuity is important, even though a lot of the staff was turned over. I think that having Freeman still there from previous staff and then Tommy Rees still there, I think is just huge. And I think it's huge for Tyler Buchner and his development. He's a former 5-star at quarterback, so that's going to go a long way. They don't really have a lot behind him in the spring game. Drew Pine did not really look good. So I wonder if they're going to try to hit the transfer market or if they're just going to hope that Tyler Buchner does not get hurt. They have one of the top tight ends in the country, Michael Mayer, coming back. And he's going to have a huge year, especially with looking at how their receiving core has kind of been injured in the spring. So they're hoping for everybody to be healthy. Tyler Buchner did have a weird injury. He rolled his ankle walking down some stairs after a history test or something. So he missed the spring game. He still participated in spring, but I think Tyler Buchner will be, he looks like everything's going to be good for him to play. They're going to need a big season out of him. They're going to need an even bigger season for them to go over. I am going under. I think that they're going to win 9 games. So it's just slightly under, but I think there's going to be one of these games that's going to sneak up on them that they're just going to lose. It's going to be tough. It's tough to be a brand new head coach and it be your first time at a major program and you have to take major lumps. I think 9-3 would be a phenomenal year for a first-year head coach with a new starting quarterback, and you start checking off the list of everything that they're going to have to do. Notre Dame has the longest streak of wins versus unranked teams, and they've got several unranked teams on their schedule this year. So I think they're going to clean up against those teams. But yeah, I think you've got some built-in losses to Ohio State and Clemson. So all that's going to take is them to slip up one other time on this schedule. So give me 9-3. I'm going to go under Notre Dame.
Yeah, so I'm with you on that. I think 9.5 is a really good number. So Marcus Freeman year 1. I think some big things continuity-wise are you keep Tommy Rees at OC. So that to me gives me some confidence in continuity on offense and defense because you keep your defensive coordinator as head coach. So it's he's still going to have some say in the defense, right? You bring in Al Golden to be your defensive coordinator. So former Miami head coach back in the day. He spent the last 2 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals as a linebackers coach. So, hey, a Super Bowl contending team in the NFL. So bringing that NFL experience will be big for that defense. Tommy Rees retained as OC. So Tyler Buchner's the kind of quarterback that when he came in, people, including myself last season, were saying, hey, this is the kind of quarterback that you recruit and that takes Notre Dame one step further to, hey, they've reached the playoff, but to get a playoff win, to go contend for a national championship, because Notre Dame's been so close. I mean, this is a team that's been to the college football playoff 2 out of the last 4 seasons. This is a team that was a close loss to Cincinnati last year away from being undefeated and being right back in the playoff and back-to-back seasons. So Tyler Buchner is that quarterback that, again, a lot of people, including myself, are saying he can take you to that next step. And I think that's still possible. I think he had a lot of growing up to do this past season, but having a full season in the system, getting a lot of game reps last season as well, even though he wasn't necessarily a starter, I think he's going to help him this year. You lose a ton of experience at running back in Kyron Williams, but Crease Tyree's back, and he should see a big step up, obviously in carries this season, but in production as well. You mentioned Michael Mayer. I mean, he's going to be contending for the Mackey Award It's funny. One of the Notre Dame, but Kyron Williams said getting to the NFL was one thing he learned, and he said he learned that NFL scouts love Michael Mayer, and so hey, that's high praise, right, from NFL scouts. So Lorenzo Style, wide receiver, had a breakout Fiesta Bowl, but Daniel, you mentioned injuries at wide receiver. This is something that plagued them all spring. Where like legit, they had like 6 like scholarship wide receivers available, which at this level is a problem. So
That's how many you play every Saturday minimum.
Right. So that doesn't help your spring. You've had a lot of injuries. You hope to get a couple of those guys back to at least get back to 8 wide receivers. Notre Dame's been one of the most consistent schools in college football as far as offensive line play. And that should not change this year. They're returning 80% of their starts on the offensive line. So that should be big for them on offense. I expect the offense to take a step forward because even though there's staff changes, offensive staff stayed relatively the same. So a new system last year, you should see progress this next year where you're looking at Notre Dame could have a top 25 offense in the country, which would be a big step up from where they were at the last 2 seasons. On defense, I mean, Isaiah Foskey could be a first rounder at defensive end next season or next year's draft. So they're going to have a really good defensive line. Their linebacker group, very veteran. So a lot of experience back at linebacker, including their leading tackler, JD Bertrand. But corner is going to be, I mean, it was a glaring weakness in the Fiesta Bowl. You saw it in that second half against Oklahoma State. And that was Oklahoma State that not necessarily a lethal passing attack in Oklahoma State. So it was a glaring weakness in that Fiesta Bowl. I don't know how much better it's going to be. You hope it's better, but it's all those same guys that are coming back. But you do get a big upgrade at safety, and it might be a name you forgot about, but 2020 All-American Brandon Joseph on Northwestern's roster transfers in to Notre Dame. So that's a big upgrade at safety with a lot of experience in the Big Ten. I mean, to summarize, both lines should be improved. I do think Buckner has the talent to take Notre Dame to the next level, and he could be better than any quarterback Brian Kelly ever had at Notre Dame. Like, he could be that good. Problem is, I mean, your schedule, this is why the win total is at 9.5. On the schedule, you have visits to the Coliseum and to the Horseshoe as bookends of the season. And Clemson comes and visits Notre Dame. So that's why you're sitting at 9.5. I just look at Notre Dame. They've been a beacon of consistency. The last 5 seasons, they've lost a total of 7 regular season games. So you're averaging a little over 1 regular season loss a year. So I'll go a little over 1 regular season loss. I think they get to 10 wins this year. So I think that stretch of Ohio State, Clemson, and USC. I mean, look, all you got to do is go 1-2 in those games. You just got to get one of them, and you're sitting really, really pretty to get to 10 wins. Because in the rest of the schedule, you got Marshall, Cal, North Carolina. That's a tough game. That's a losable game. BYU at BYU, that is a very losable game. We'll talk about BYU, but it's after a bye. So your other road games are Navy and Syracuse. So it's like, you've got tough road trips to Ohio State and USC, but other than that, the schedule is manageable. So I think Notre Dame does get to 10 wins this year. So I'll go over that win total, and I'm excited to see what Notre Dame does under first-year coach Marcus Freeman. I mean, there's some people calling for a playoff berth this year. I don't know about that because they got to go undefeated. Like, they're not getting in at 11-1. So I highly doubt that.
Not without a lot of
wins.
help.
Right. Yeah. 10 wins would be a very impressive first-year campaign for Marcus Freeman. And the cupboard's not empty. So I have just come to expect Notre Dame to be a 10-win team. Love it. All right. So Notre Dame, you're going under. I'm going over. Let's go to Cincinnati. Hey, Cincinnati coming off of a playoff berth. First group of 5 team to do so. They go 13-0 heading into the playoff. Your gift for getting in was Alabama. So sorry about that, Cincinnati. But hey, Cincinnati's win total after that season set at 9.5. Power rating seems to like the Bearcats. Daniel, do you like the Bearcats?
I mean, for traditionally what they are, yes. But for their all-time team that they had last year, No, because I do think that, I mean, obviously, Luke Fickell still being there as a head coach is huge because I do think he's a phenomenal head coach. I think that, that kind of continuity, regardless, is going to be, he's a program builder. So they're not going to have a year where they fall flat on their face.
Right.
Now, could they regress to 9-3 and still be good? Yeah, we've seen some of these teams like UCF and Memphis, dominate for a couple years and then step back,
Right.
and not step back into obscurity, but step back into kind of a reality and then build back up and cycle up. They lost two cornerbacks that were drafted in the NFL, a couple defensive ends, obviously their quarterback, and with Desmond Ritter, and then starting running back Jerome Ford. They just a lot of not just talent, but key talent. Um, and it's not to say that they're not going to replace it and not going to have capable bodies, but this is the type of program that's going to is a program that requires development, and majority of development happens on the field. Desmond Ritter was a 3-year starter, so Jerome Ford started for 2 years. All these guys played a lot of ball, so I do think they're going to have to get some games under their belt. I know that starting the first week at Arkansas is no picnic, and then they got to play Kennesaw State, my Owls. So
Better watch out for them Owls.
that's a loss. Hey, but it is frustrating. I'll say this: it is frustrating to play a triple option team, and they're coming off a loss. I expect them to win that game. I'm just joking around, but it is a frustrating game to have to play, and it could throw off some of your practice development throughout the season, especially after a tough game like Arkansas. So that being said, I was kind of going through their schedule. They play Indiana. I don't know if I think that much of Indiana because obviously they beat them last year, but it is a Power 5 team on the schedule along with Arkansas. And then I think they're losing to UCF this year. I was like, I think they're losing to UCF. They're playing in the bounce house. They're losing to Arkansas. So do I think they're going to lose one more game? I think between at Tulsa, at SMU, or Indiana, they're going to lose one of those three. So I'm taking them at 9-3. I'm going under with Cincinnati.
Going under. So yeah, Cincinnati. Look, I know they were in the same playoff as Alabama and Georgia, but they do not recruit like Alabama and Georgia do. And you mentioned it, that Cincinnati benefits by like great talent evaluation, and like early on they hit on their kids, and then they do a great job of development, which they did. I mean, they had 9 players drafted. That was, I think, third most or tied for second most among all schools.
There's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, highest in school history, historic season, 13-0. They should be praised for even making the playoff. Like, that season was a huge success. Going 12-0 in the regular season while beating Notre Dame and Indiana is no easy feat. So they earned their way there. They deserve to be there. But when you lose that much production, I mean, and Bill Conley's returning production numbers, Cincinnati's 92nd overall, 62nd on offense, 115th on defense. So that defense was really, really good. I mean, you lose 2 phenomenal corners with Kobe Bryant and Sauce Gardner. So it's going to be tough to just expect that again from Cincinnati this year, because they went from like a 10-win team to a 13-win team. You're going to regress back to mean at least for a season. But that's why this win total set at 9.5 is that I'm with you. I think it's a really good number. I think they go under, but I think it's like a 9-win team. I think that you're losing one of your Arkansas, Indiana games, probably most likely Arkansas. It's on the road. They're going to be a really good team. And I think where they ran through the conference last year, I mean, look, when you do what they did, I mean, ask Alabama, you get the biggest target on your back where everybody gets up to play you. And they had a couple of close conference games last year. I mean, they had 2 conference games that were they won by 1 score. So I just think they lose a couple of those, whether it's, I mean, they got SMU, they got UCF, they got Tulsa on the schedule, and all of those are on the road. So, I mean, you lose a couple of those, and look, 9-3 is not a bad season after what you just did, because it's just going to take time to develop that talent again. and get everybody playing together. Now, if they come out and win 10 games, I'll be really impressed. I'll be honest with you. Like, I'll be really impressed with the job Luke Fickell does. But this is a team that is ready for the Big 12. Like, I think this is immediately in the new Big 12. Like, this is a top 5 team in the Big 12 and in the new Big 12.
Yeah.
So, they're sitting pretty. I'm going under in the win total, but that's not a knock on this program. It's just, it's going to be a year before I think you're back in that double-digit win column. So you're going under. I'm going under on Cincinnati's 9.5 win total. Let's go to the Houston Cougars, also at 9.5. So those 3 teams at our highest win totals. Houston, actually, I'll save the stat for my thing. But coming off of a phenomenal season under Dana Holgorsen. So 9.5 win total. You going over or under, Daniel?
This is one that I just think that some of these teams are going to cycle up and some are going to cycle down. I like Houston this year. I think 10-2 is a possibility for them. Looking at their schedule, I do think that UTSA isn't going to just be a pushover. For some reason, they're always locked in a battle with Texas Tech. Tulane's tough. At Memphis, I feel like you're just not going to skate through that. I think that they love having a bye week before Navy for being able to set their defense before they play that option. But, you've got SMU and Tulsa. These teams on their schedule, it's not that any one of them is like an elite automatic loss. It's just like the group of them, you'll lose a couple of those games. So I do feel like 10-2 is very much on their radar, though. You're returning Clayton Tune there. This is his 3rd year as a starting quarterback. He famously took over for De'Aaron King when De'Aaron King played for first 4 games and then sat out the rest of the year. Clayton Tune came in and was the guy. And he played well. And he's run this Dana Holgorsen offense. Now, I've got questions regarding, missing Logan Thomas at defensive end, him getting, being a top draft pick. He was a good, just pass rusher. And so losing that pass rusher, they're going to be able to recreate that. I think that they're going to have just enough guys, but this is one of these teams that if they have a year, this is their year. I don't know if they're going to go full throttle. I do go over. I like 10-2 with this schedule because, like I said, there's not any automatic losses. There's a couple where you're just like, they're going to stub their toe somewhere, but they're not going to lose 3 of these games. They'll lose 2 of these games.
I'm with you on the over with Houston. So I think this is a 10-win team at minimum. I don't trust they're going to get to 11 wins. I just need to see it in the regular season. I need to see it. Excuse me. So, Caleb, didn't you mention, they lose, a big loss. They're starting running back McCaskill to an ACL an ACL injury.
The industry is thriving right now.
It's terrible. ACL injury in April, so most likely not back for the season, for the entire season. Schedule sets up nice. Your out of conference has 2 of the worst teams in the Big 12. So you're playing 2 Big 12 teams, but they're the worst teams. But you do open up with 2 road games, which I think is tricky. At UTSA, which is coming off of like their best season ever. At Texas Tech, which, hey, under new head coach, they seem pretty fiery. They're, that's trajecting up, but you get Texas Tech and Kansas before getting into conference play. Again, I do think it's a 10-win team at minimum, so I'm going to go over as well. I just don't quite trust them to get to 11. But, hey, one of 19 teams that returned their starting quarterback, their head coach, their offensive coordinator, and their defensive coordinator. So Houston is one of 19 teams that's doing that in FBS this year. So
Houston, University of
continuity, University of Houston. So you and I both going over on the Cougs. So let's go next in the win total pecking order. UCF Knights. The Knights win total set at 9. Gus Malzahn in year 2 in the American Conference. Last year in the American Conference, they'll be in the Big 12 next year, does he go out with a bang and the American win total set at 9, Daniel?
Let's go over that.
Let's turn on the Gus bus and
They turn up at the bounce house. All right. This, Jacob, you know my feelings. You've known them since it happened. John Reese Plumlee transferring to
JRP.
UCF is the single greatest move in the college football offseason. Single greatest move.
Love it.
Because that means we're going to get the whole year to watch him. Like, he was just wasting away as the backup at Ole Miss. Oh, we're going to get him some packages at receiver. And he did fine, but like, I want the ball in his hands every play. All right. In 2019, he was electric. Go cut on the tape and watch Ole Miss and LSU. And I mean, he's running away from folks who are in the NFL right now, players who are littered all over NFL rosters. He was running away from them. He runs a 4.4 in the 40. He plays baseball and just an overall good dude. Like, he is this generation's Renaissance man. All right. He's going to make a difference. But right now, Gus Malzahn, his offense is best when he has a guy who can minimally throw it, but can run away from people and frustrate the heck out of everybody, i.e. Nick Marshall in 2013. I feel like that was the best version outside of Cam Newton, just doing Cam Newton things, though.
Just Cam Newton. I don't
outside
know.
Outside of that, outside of having a once-in-a-lifetime talent of Cam Newton, Nick Marshall, who was a defensive back at Georgia, transferred and was a quarterback for Gus Malzahn. So
he was quick.
It sounds familiar, but it seemed like they gained no less than 5 or 6 yards every play. And that'll play, man. That'll play. This is going to be a fun team to watch. I do think that in Gus Malzahn's second year, he's going to settle in, and it's going to be more of he's going to have his fingerprints all over this. I think that alone, that one move does, project well for them. Just John Reese Plumlee coming in at quarterback. Devad Wilson at safety is going to be an all-conference player. And you look at the schedule, I mean, South Carolina State, Florida Atlantic, these teams, there should be just taking care of them. They do pull 2 ACC teams, but it's Louisville and Georgia Tech. And while I think that they could probably lose to Louisville, they could beat Louisville. I would expect them to beat Georgia Tech. They play SMU, Temple. These Cincinnati is a tough game. It's at home. There's no team on their schedule that I feel like they can't beat, and that's big for me at 9 wins. I think that they're going to win 10 games. I really think that they can win 11 games, but I'm comfortable with their floor being 10. So I'm going over. Give me the Knights.
Love it. And I'm just going to hop on the Gus bus with you and agree with everything you said. Yeah, JRP coming in. I'm pumped to watch it. You and I said last season, potentially wrongly, that Auburn and Tennessee downgraded. And, well, one of those is for sure right. And that I don't know what Auburn thought they were getting into with Brian Harsin, but not what they thought it was. Gus Malzahn was beating Nick Saban. What are you doing now? So Gus at UCF, he seems to be enjoying himself. The defense is going to be the strength of this team. Like, I think the offense can make a big jump with JRP, but they got a really good defense, and they could have the best defense in the American Conference. You mentioned the schedule. The schedule is super manageable because your toughest games are at home. Like the 3 toughest teams you're going to play are Louisville, SMU, and Cincinnati. You get all 3 of those games at home. You play 2 ACC teams, but one of them is Georgia Tech. So it sets up nicely on the schedule. JRP is a perfect fit for this offense. You mentioned Devad Wilson, Big Cat Bryant on the defensive line, manageable schedule. Yeah, hit the over. 10-win team. Easy 10-win team. So 10-2 for UCF. I'm going over. I'm excited to watch
forward
this season.
When I don't get to watch their games, just being able to flip on the highlights and just seeing John Reese Plumlee running away from folks, scoring touchdowns. It's going to be great.
Next on our win total list, BYU. So BYU win total set at 8.5. coming off of, hey, 2 really good seasons for BYU. So 8.5, Daniel, seems to me like probably a product of their schedule this year.
Yeah, I do think that that's probably accurate. I mean, USF is going to be tough. I'm just kidding. But no, they have Baylor and Oregon back-to-back weeks. Obviously, they play Notre Dame and Arkansas in back-to-back weeks. The That's just not conducive to, even if they have a good game against one of them, they're going to turn around and have a loss. Or if they lose, it's tough to, get back up for that next game. They play at Liberty, which, it's that, they lose Malik Willis, but Hugh Freeze is still there. That's probably still going to be just not an easy game. And then at Boise State, I mean, there's too much. It's similar to what I was thinking about Houston, where there's enough where they're going to stub their toe, but I also do think, I mean, I think Baylor and Oregon are for sure losses. I think Notre Dame and Arkansas are for sure losses. So being at 8.5, I mean, I'm going under, and I think that they'd still be a good team at 8-4.
I'm going over. So I initially I was with you. I went under. I was like, and same 4 losses where I was just like, you know what? Those teams are just better. I think they get one of them. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say they get one. I don't know which one. I think if you're getting, a Baylor or an Oregon early, like, does Oregon lose to Georgia and then like they're kind of reeling and figuring themselves out? But I think they get one of those. 3 of the 4 on the road. Baylor's at home. It's probably the most gettable on the schedule. But what's tough about their schedule is not just who they play, but they go 10 weeks before getting a bye. Like, so, I mean, you look at Boise State right before that bye week, you circle that game and you're like, what if you're just exhausted? Like,
Right.
injuries start rolling around. You don't have time, So I think this could be one of these seasons where like it rains, it pours. And if the losses start piling up, you're not going to get a break, and that could be bad. But again, this is one of the other 19 teams that returned their head coach, both coordinators, and starting quarterback. They've been really good for 2 straight seasons. I think they really impressed me last year with replacing Zach Wilson, replacing Jeff Grimes, and then just rolling still. Here's the other thing. BYU is number 2 in Bill Conley's returning production. So 28th on offense, number 1 on defense. They return every starter on defense. So this is a team that was really good last year, returns everybody. The schedule gets tougher. And it's one of these things where I think BYU could have a worse record than last season and be a much better football team, just because the schedule's so difficult. But at 8.5, I will go over. I think they get one of those games. I think they get to 9-3. And again, I think they're a better team than last year, although the record might not necessarily increase in wins. So I'm excited to watch this team. I mean, this is a team that I think has like a 10-win, like, I don't know, maybe 11-win ceiling. Like, it would not shock me if they just go 11-1.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
I'm not predicting to do it. I think they're a 93 team, but I wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting here at the end of the season and it's like, oh wow, they beat 3 of those 4 that we thought were going to be better than BYU, and they're just sitting here at 11-1 again, surprising everybody. So I was dumb enough to doubt them last year. Not again. So I'll go over the 8.5 at 9. Let's go to Boise State. Boise State win total set also at 8.5. Daniel, you going over or under?
So this one was a little tough, and that's based on the schedule. So with it being 8.5, I do think I can pick 9 wins on their schedule. And so I've gone through it a few times. At Oregon State, I think it's going to be tough because I do think Oregon State, it's tough to go there and win if you're not overwhelmingly better. They'll beat New Mexico, UT Martin. I would think they're going to beat UTEP. San Diego State's going to be tough. Fresno State's going to be tough. They do have a bye week before they play Air Force, which, is what it is. And then they play BYU. And then I want to see what Nevada is going to be with, losing Romeo Dubes and then quarterback who I forgot his name,
Carson
and
Strong.
Carson Strong, who was, the talk of the draft as far as being that next guy. It's I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over is Boise State. Hank Bachmeier is back for his sixth year at quarterback. Which is funny. We could say jokingly sixth year, but there's a lot of guys who are sixth year quarterbacks now
Yeah,
because
now
of
there is.
COVID. But he has been there. He's a 4 year. This is his fourth year starting. He was a very high recruit. Obviously, we all know that. He has not necessarily lived up to it so far, but he's held on to the starting gig. And this is his fourth year. So I just think that that's important to have that. I think they can win 9 games. So let me go over. With this schedule, I think there's enough turnover on enough of these other teams that Boise State will be in the right place, right time.
Boise State as a program has been a beacon of consistency. I mean, a beacon of consistency. So much so that in 2021 they went 7-5. Daniel, do you know the last time that they won 7 games or less prior to 2021?
Oof, I don't. 2006.
You'd have to go back to 1998. They won 6 games. Now, this is not including the COVID year where they went 5-2. They played 7 total games. So, but outside of that, 1998 they went 6-5.
Wow.
And that was the last time they won less than 8 games in the season. So they started 2-3. It was their worst start in 20 years. I mean, if you're a Boise State fan, you've just come to expect that like you're going to be in the conference championship game for the Mountain West or whatever conference you're in, and like you want to be one of the teams competing for that New Year's Six bowl. Like that's who Boise State is as a program. Maybe there's a little pattern here, but Andy Avalos comes in year 1, they go 7-5. Maybe that was a pattern of Brian Harsin, the direction of the program, perhaps. I think so. So, Boise State's defense should take a big jump this year. I think that'll be the strength of this team. Of course, Andy Avalos coming from Oregon as a defensive coordinator. So I think that takes a big jump. Schedule, I think, sets up nice, actually, where if the win total is set at 8.5, I'm pretty comfortable going over and going 9. So I think they get to 9 wins this year. And, you're back in that conversation. I'd love them to get to 10, but I think you're going to need a couple of years of recruiting and transfers and Boise State getting back to what Boise State does. So I'll go over. I'm with you. 9 wins for Boise State. Another Mountain West team, Fresno State, coming off of a tremendous season last year. Their win total, a little bit less, set at 8 for the Bulldogs. Daniel, you going over or under the 8 for Fresno State?
That's with Fresno. It's tough because I think that they have a lot of peers that are close to them. I guess that's how you would define peer, but there's just several of these teams that I don't know what to do with San Jose State, Boise State, New Mexico, San Diego State, UNLV, Nevada. Like, I just think that there's a grouping of these schools. I do think that they have a history of being better. They play USC this year. They play Oregon State. I expect both of those to be losses. And then Boise State, I'm expecting Boise State to have a better year than Fresno State. These two lock horns a bunch, and they a lot of times will end up in the championship together, Mountain West championship together. But they'll beat UConn. I'm looking through, and I'm not confident they're going to beat San Diego State or San Jose State. They with it being just 8 wins, I'm tempted to go over because all I got to do is get them to 9 wins. That being said, I'm going to go under. They do have Jake Haener at quarterback, who's a transfer from Washington. I think that they're going to be a solid team, but just don't know if they've got that extra gear to get away from, like I said, all these peers, all these teams that can beat them on any given Saturday, and who are probably competing with getting the same players, and all of this. So I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna say that they don't quite eclipse that 8 wins. So go under.
So are you saying 7 or are you saying 8?
I'm saying they'll go 7 wins.
7 wins. All right. I'm going to go over. I do think they get to 9. I think with their schedule, it is manageable. So you get Oregon State and USC out of the Pac-12, which that's not a great draw out of the Pac-12, especially this year with USC. So I'm with you on the peers. I just think Kalen DeBoer has raised the program level where, the COVID year, you go 3-3. Last year in year 2, you go 9-3. So I like following trends of where programs are going. I think this team could be as good as last year's team, but similar to BYU, like a more difficult schedule. So you could see a drop in wins where 9 wins would be a drop in wins, 10-win team last year. So I see him going 9-3. I see him going over. I think this is a team that's facing Boise State in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. So yeah, I'll go over 9-3. 7, man. That's Fresno State. Daniel Hammock, known Fresno State hater.
Write it down.
Last team we'll talk about, SMU. Their win total is set at 7, Daniel. So year 1 for Rhett Lashley. Where are you going with the Stangs?
My Stangs. So Tanner Mordecai finally going to be the starting quarterback, or I guess he was quarterback last year, but famously had to dodge all the transfer deals from before. I'm interested to see what they do this year. This is a team that, had somewhat gotten consistent under Sonny Dykes. He had brought, he'd raised the floor. He'd made it to where teams, they could take teams bounce backs. A lot of these Big 12 teams would, their quarterbacks or their, skill position players would transfer there. I like SMU. The schedule, though, is something that I'm just not sure they'll be able to manage. 7 wins, though, that's it. I've got to go over. It's my SMU Mustangs.
Man.
They're gonna make it. They're gonna make it.
Or how many wins are you thinking?
Sorry, I'm just counting them up. North Texas. I was worried about Lamar, but they'll take care of them.
You got to take care of Lamar, man.
They're gonna lose to UCF and TCU. I think they'll lose to TCU. I don't know. They got to lose to Sonny Dykes, right? Maryland. Oh, it's tough, man. It's tough.
You getting
Memphis, Tulane, Tulsa, Cincy, UCF. Yeah, they're gonna get to 8. They're gonna get to 8. I'm going over.
I might shock you here. I'm going over. I'm very confidently over. I think if there's a team poised to make a year 1 jump, and I'm including USC in this. This might be the best chance, maybe second best chance. I'm really high on USC, so maybe it's one of the best chances for a team to make a year 1 jump under a new head coach with Rhett Lashley. I think he fits what SMU is already running under Sonny Dykes. I don't think it's a big transition for their offense. I mean, this is a team that will have a top 25 offense in the country, potentially top 15. Returning production-wise, I mean, they're 19th overall, 20th on offense, 35th on defense. This is a top 40 team last year. I think this is a top 40 team this year. And if you're a top 40 team, like there's not a lot of difference power rating wise in teams that are like the 25th best team and the 40th best team. Like 25 is a weird number to rank teams. That's what we've chosen to do. So this is a really good football team. So I think they get one of Maryland and TCU. And like, can they go with one loss in the American? I think so. So like 10-win SMU in year one. And how wouldn't it be hilarious? You know, Chip Patterson. How funny would it be if SMU beat Sonny Dykes this year? I mean, this game's at SMU. That they will not be friendly for his return. They were not friendly during his last game when it had already broken that he was leaving for TCU. Fans are shouting at him to go ahead and wear his purple. So they should have a top 25 offense in the country. There's not going to be a lot of those in the American. And so I'm looking at their schedule and saying, who can go score for score with SMU? And I think there's probably 3 teams that can go score for score on their schedule. And so that's how I've looked at it with their schedule is who can go score for score. I think there's 3 teams. I think they can win one of those games. And if they're winning one of those, that's getting me to 10 wins. So the defense won't be great. But again, I'm thinking who can go score for score with them. And I don't see a lot of teams on the schedule. I think there's 4 teams that can go score for score with them. So do I think they can win half of those? I think so. And I think they challenge for the American Conference Championship. So I'm higher on your Stings, man. I have to claim them as my Stings now. So your Knights and my Stings. So yeah, man. Hey, this was fun. First episode, and next week we'll talk some ACC Atlantic. So we got Clemson, Florida State, NC State.
Dogs, we ain't no puppies.
Hey, I'm a big fan of the Atlantic this year, and there's a lot of good teams in that division, or potentially good teams in that division that you're rooting for. The Pack, Louisville should make a jump. So excited to talk ACC next week. But hey, be sure to follow us on social media at the Extra Point Pod, where you're posting graphics of all these picks for me and from Daniel as we go through the season. And again, we'll have these previews on YouTube. You can listen on your podcast, Apple and Spotify, Google, wherever you find your podcasts. We're pretty much everywhere. But be sure to follow us as we go through these fun season previews. But you can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. But that will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. Daniel?